Welcome back to my YouTube channel in the spring of 1984. As the clang of metal echoed through the vast halls of the Philadelphia Mint, machines whirred with a rhythmic certainty, pressing copper-plated zinc blanks into 1-cent coins by the millions. It was a year marked by tension and transition. Ronald Reagan's America was deep into the Cold War. Technology was advancing rapidly, and the economy was stabilizing. Amidst this atmosphere of determination and productivity, a curious mistake quietly slipped through, silent, unnoticed, insignificant to the naked eye. A single deviation, born not out of negligence, but out of sheer mechanical inevitability, found its way onto a coin meant to be utterly ordinary. The 1984 Lincoln cent, bearing the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln on its obverse, seemed indistinguishable from its countless counterparts. No dramatic design overhaul, no commemorative flair, just another penny intended for pockets, piggy banks, and sidewalks. Yet, in the relentless monotony of mass production, a single press, out of sync by the slightest margin, introduced something altogether unintended. It was not until years later that a numismatist, sorting through a bundle of near-forgotten change, would first detect a whisper of that mistake. It began with a sense, intuitive, vague, but persistent. A seasoned collector, seated under the glow of a desk lamp, his fingers calloused from decades of handling coinage, lifted the penny toward the light. Something about the face of Lincoln looked off. Not grotesquely so, not enough to prompt alarm, but enough to ignite curiosity. There was a peculiar doubling to the president's profile, barely perceptible yet undeniably there. The collector's breath slowed. He leaned in, adjusting his loop. There it was, distinct doubling on Lincoln's ear. He turned the coin in his hand, inspecting its edges, its sheen, its every nuance. This was no postmint damage, no trick of light or wear. The doubling was sharp, clean, and deliberate, a double die obverse. The error had not been caused after the strike, but during the very process of creation. The die itself had shifted, ever so slightly, causing an imprint that should never have been. The doubling was most evident on Lincoln's earlobe, an unassuming spot, easily missed by the casual eye. Yet for those who knew, this was the mark of rarity. News of the discovery was slow to spread. It wasn't until additional examples began to surface, first in penny rolls from old bank vaults, then in family coin jars, that the numismatic community began to take notice. Each coin bore the same curious anomaly. At first, some dismissed it as a curiosity, a minor minting error of no significant consequence. But others saw potential. They remembered how minor imperfections had catapulted otherwise forgettable coins into auction stardom. Collectors began scouring their collections. Dealers started offering modest premiums for any verified 1984 double die cents. At coin shows, whispers grew louder. Inquiries became more frequent. "You have one of those 84 errors?" became a familiar refrain. Slowly, the market responded. What was once a 1-cent coin, tossed carelessly into jars, began trading for $5. Then 10. Still modest, yes, but growing. The buzz was undeniable. And then, something curious occurred. As prices climbed, reports of fakes began emerging. Less scrupulous sellers were altering common 1984 cents in an attempt to replicate the doubled ear. But collectors were vigilant. True doubled dies had crisp, unmistakable markers. The doubling was not just on the ear, but subtly visible on the jaw and neckline. These signs became the hallmarks of authenticity. Auction houses began listing verified examples. A graded MS-65 red specimen fetched a surprising 3-figure sum, well above expectations for a coin of its age and denomination. Word spread beyond collectors into the fringes of mainstream media. "Is your penny worth $500?" Some headlines teased. The frenzy was cautious but real. Pawn shops, estate sales, and attic searches all became the backdrop to an intensifying hunt. One collector, an elderly man from Des Moines, shared a story that sent ripples through the numismatic world. Decades earlier, he'd noticed the oddity in a batch of change he received from a small-town gas station. Something about the coin spoke to him, and on a whim, he'd set it aside, placing it in a tiny cardboard holder labeled Lincoln Ear. Weird! He rediscovered it while moving boxes into a retirement home. A subsequent appraisal revealed the coin to be one of the finest examples of the 1984 double die cent in existence. When it sold at auction, the final bid stunned even the auctioneer $1 800. But that was not the peak. As the years went on, higher grade specimens began commanding even more aggressive premiums. The coin, once known only to a niche group of collectors, now found a place in official grading registry sets. Those chasing perfection, the registry warriors, sought the elusive MS-67 Plus red examples, pristine in luster, unblemished by time. One such coin, appearing unexpectedly at a major auction, ignited a bidding war between two collectors with a known rivalry. When the hammer finally fell, the price had breached the $5,000 mark. It would have seemed like the natural arc of an era coin's fame. Discovery, excitement, value appreciation, end of story. But the 1984 cent was not done surprising the world. In 2016, during a routine recataloguing of a private collection, a renowned numismatist discovered something peculiar. Amid a series of known double die examples was one with a twist, what appeared to be a triple imprint on Lincoln's ear. The doubling was not just repeated, it overlapped in a way never before documented. Initially dismissed as a damaged die or contact mark, further analysis revealed it to be something entirely different, a potential second-stage error. Speculation erupted. Was there a second die used at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984 that suffered an even more dramatic shift? Could this explain why some double die examples appeared slightly different under magnification? Enthusiasts returned to their collections, inspecting previously dismissed coins with renewed scrutiny. A pattern emerged. It wasn't just one coin. There were at least 4 more known examples, all sharing the same peculiar trait. Grading agencies took notice. The new variety was dubbed the 1984 Lincoln Cent, triple ear variant, an unofficial moniker that quickly gained traction. While experts debated whether it was a distinct die or an extension of the original, the market responded with its usual volatility. Prices spiked. Even lower-grade examples of this newer discovery saw 4-digit valuations. And just like that, a coin once minted by the billions had become a playground of mystery and value. The physical characteristics of the error became a fascination. The clean, secondary outline of Lincoln's ear, often mistaken for a shadow, was a product of die misalignment during hubbing, a process whereby the coin's image is impressed onto the die. In a properly aligned operation, the image is crisp and singular. But a misalignment, even by a fraction of a millimeter, results in a doubling that transfers to every coin the die strikes. And when that die isn't caught, when it quietly continues its work for hundreds, perhaps thousands of strikes, rarity is born not out of intent, but of oversight. Over time, only a select few of the original dies used in 1984 have been conclusively linked to this doubling. And of those, fewer still produce coins of high enough quality to remain in uncirculated condition. Most fell victim to circulation, scratched, dulled, lost. The few that survived in mint state became the crown jewels of Lincoln Cent collectors. One final twist emerged in 2022. A coin dealer in Oregon received a curious email. An elderly widow had discovered a box in her late husband's study, filled with thousands of 1-cent coins. She'd been planning to cash them in until she noticed he'd marked several of them with red ink. "Yar?" She mailed them in, more out of sentiment than expectation. The dealer sifted through them, not expecting much, until he found one. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 perfectly preserved 1984 double die cents, 4 of the common variety, and 1 with a triple strike. That single coin, after grading, was given a unique designation, MS-66 Red, 1984 triple die-averse, first discoverable strike. It became the earliest known strike of its kind. The buzz it generated was unlike anything seen in years. When the auction house unveiled it at a spring showcase, expectations were high. But no one expected the final number, $12,300. In 2014, the hum of machinery inside the Denver and Philadelphia mints carried the weight of a century-old tradition. Presses operated at breakneck speed, ejecting countless Lincoln cents into bins that gleamed with freshly minted copper. It was routine, precise, predictable. After all, the Lincoln cent had been in production for over 100 years. And by 2014, it had become so common, so unremarkably embedded in daily life, that few gave it more than a passing glance. That year, as in so many before it, the familiar obverse bore the solemn profile of Abraham Lincoln, his gaze fixed forward, etched with careful lines of determination and age. On the reverse, the Union shield, an emblem of unity, strength, and continuity, stood firm, flanked by the motto E pluribus unum. Everything about the 2014 cent was meant to be routine, but within that sea of uniformity, a subtle anomaly occurred. Somewhere deep in the churning mechanics of mint operations, a single die suffered a misalignment. It wasn't dramatic. There was no fanfare, no machinery shutdown. Just a silent shift, small enough to go unnoticed, but lasting long enough to stamp a trace of imperfection onto the coins that passed beneath it. The error was invisible to most. Only under scrutiny, deliberate, practiced, obsessive, did it begin to whisper its presence. It started with a man in Ohio, a lifelong collector who, after decades of meticulously combing through pocket change, sat at his kitchen table late one evening. There was nothing unusual about the handful of coins before him, yet one cent drew his gaze. At first, it was instinct more than recognition. He tilted it toward the light. Something about Lincoln's profile felt duplicated, but not in an obvious way. Out came the magnifying loupe. What he saw sent a flicker of electricity through him. There it was, clear, distinct, doubling along Lincoln's eyelid, jawline, and parts of his bow tie. This wasn't the result of wear or post-mint damage. It was a genuine double die obverse, a flaw embedded in the very die used to strike the coin. The collector didn't speak. Not at first. He simply stared at the coin in silence, feeling a mixture of disbelief and rising anticipation. He'd seen such errors before, on coins from the 1950s, the 70s, and famously in the 1984 cent. But never in something so new. Could it really be? He placed the coin in a protective flip, labeled it with a question mark, and began the research. Weeks passed. Online forums offered speculation. Photos were posted, debated, dismissed, and occasionally verified. Eventually, a few more examples surfaced. Most were circulated, warned, but the doubling, when present, was unmistakable. The conversation among numismatists grew louder. Third-party grading services began receiving submissions, and some were authenticated. The 2014 double die cent was real. What followed wasn't frenzy, but quiet determination. Collectors and dealers alike began to view 2014 cents differently. Coin rolls, long forgotten in vaults or tucked behind store counters, were cracked open and searched. Some turned up nothing. Others unveiled small treasures. A handful of 2014 DDOs with visible doubling on the obverse, clear enough to distinguish, rare enough to raise eyebrows. The market response was cautious. At first, raw examples traded for $5 to $10. Then, as certified specimens in mint state emerged, prices inched upward. A few lucky finds in brilliant uncirculated condition reached $50. But that wasn't where the story stopped. An intriguing variant soon made an appearance. Unlike the more obvious doubling on Lincoln's jaw or eyelid, this version showed duplication in a far subtler, unexpected place, the Liberty inscription. Slight shadowing behind the letters hinted at a second impression, as though the die had shifted during the hubbing process and struck again. The effect was delicate, visible only under strong magnification, but it added a new dimension to the error's complexity. It was unlike previous double dies seen on Lincoln since. The discovery of this secondary variety, now nicknamed Liberty Ghosting, by collectors deepened the mystery. Was this the product of the same die deterioration, or had another faulty die gone unnoticed entirely? The Mint never issued a statement. No official acknowledgement ever came. That silence only fueled speculation. ATCoin shows, whispers spread. More than one dealer recalled dismissing a customer's inquiry about a strange 2014 penny years earlier. Now, those same dealers scoured their inventory, hoping to find a copy they'd overlooked. By 2018, the value of confirmed double die examples had tripled. High-grade coins, those in MS66 and higher, began crossing the $150 threshold, particularly those authenticated by PCGS and NGC with strong doubling markers. Then came the twist. In early 2021, a coin collector in Kansas, known for hoarding sealed mint rolls, stumbled upon something extraordinary. While cataloging his untouched 2014 Denver rolls, he cracked one open and found an entire sequence of coins with nearly identical doubling characteristics. Not just a few coins, but an entire string of 21, all struck in succession. He submitted them to grading services, and every coin came back as a confirmed 2014 double die obverse. Their sequential serial numbers offered something never before seen, a progression of the die deterioration, visible from coin to coin, like a flipbook animation of a machine losing its precision. The numismatic community was stunned. The set was dubbed the Kansas Chain, and it became a case study in die fatigue and error development. Offers poured in from collectors and institutions alike. Eventually, the full set was sold at auction to a private buyer, who paid a collective sum of $16,000 for all 21 coins. Meanwhile, individual high-grade 2014 double die sets began appearing more regularly on auction listings, often selling for between $80 and $250, depending on condition and prominence of the doubling. One particular specimen, rated MS67 red with exceptionally sharp doubling on both Lincoln's eye and the Liberty text, fetched $730 at a regional auction, an unexpected peak that signaled just how far the coin had come. But not all treasures were certified or sealed away. Some surfaced in the most unlikely of places. A high school student in New Jersey, who'd been given a coffee tin of loose change by her grandfather, found one nestled between two grimy nickels. She submitted it out of curiosity, encouraged by a YouTube video on coin errors. Weeks later, she received her results. MS66 red, 2014 double die obverse. That coin, now encased in a slab, was valued at $400. For her, it was a lucky break. For collectors, it was another reminder that the 2014 DDO was still out there, hiding in plain sight. Today, the coin remains a point of fascination. Unlike earlier double die since, the 2014 version emerged in the modern era of advanced minting and digital precision, where such errors were thought to be nearly extinct. Yet, against those odds, a flaw crept in, a glitch in the system, a ghost in the machine. It challenged assumptions, revived interest in the Lincoln series, and reminded the numismatic world that even in an age of automation, imperfection finds a way. As of now, the highest verified sale of a 2014 double die obverse cent, graded MS67 red, with strong doubling on the ear, jawline, and Liberty, closed at a remarkable $1,200. 1 cent, transformed by a moment of mechanical misalignment, now stands as a testament to patience, curiosity, and the enduring thrill of discovery. In 1972, the United States was navigating a time of shifting identity. The Vietnam War was ongoing, the Watergate scandal had yet to erupt, and Americans found themselves pulled between hope and disillusionment. Amid this backdrop of national tension and cultural transformation, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia continued its unrelenting task of striking billions of coins. Among them, the humble Lincoln sent the 1 cent coin, already a familiar fixture in Americans' lives since 1909, was in no danger of retirement. With Lincoln's stoic profile facing right on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, the coin remained both symbolic and practical. In 1972, over 2.9 billion Lincoln cents were struck at the Philadelphia Mint alone. There was nothing unusual about that number. But buried deep within that enormous mintage was something wholly unexpected, an error that wouldn't be noticed immediately, but would eventually ripple through the numismatic world with far-reaching consequences. At the time, the Mint was transitioning to new hubbing technology, moving from single-squeeze to multi-squeeze die creation. Dies were still created manually in stages, each requiring multiple impressions from a working hub. If the alignment during these impressions was off, even slightly, the result could be disastrous: doubling of design elements. In most cases, these flawed dies were caught and destroyed. But not all. The mistake was subtle at first, and few noticed. It would take the eyes of a seasoned collector to bring it into focus. He was a retired postal worker in Pennsylvania, known to his neighbors as the coin guy. His hobby was methodical and deeply personal, searching rolls of pennies with the same care he once used to sort letters. One afternoon, as he sifted through a roll of 1972 cents from the bank, something made him pause. A coin gleamed just a bit differently under the kitchen light. It wasn't the luster, it was the lettering. He leaned in. The word, Liberty, appeared to be printed twice, just barely offset. Not only that, but the date, 1972, itself looked layered. It wasn't a smudge. It wasn't postman damage. It was raised and clear. Every number, every letter, appeared doubled, as if the coin had been stamped twice, almost perfectly on top of itself, but not quite. He pulled out his magnifier. The doubling extended across Lincoln's profile, his chin, throat, and even the bridge of his nose. It wasn't random. It was structured, mechanical. Something had gone wrong at the Mint. He contacted a local dealer. The reaction was cautious but intrigued. Double die coins had been discovered before, famously in 1955 and again in 1969, but this one was different. The doubling was bold, dramatic, unmistakable. Soon, word began to spread. By the mid-1970s, collectors nationwide were on alert. The error was officially designated as a double die obverse. As more examples came to light, it became clear that not all 1972 double dies were created equal. There were minor variants, slight doubling here and there, but one version stood out from all the rest. A specific die pairing with strong doubling on the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." This was classified as DDO001. The excitement wasn't confined to numismatic circles. Even casual hobbyists began sifting through pocket change. Banks saw a small spike in roll requests. Dealers reported higher foot traffic and demand for 1972 cents. Everyone wanted to find the dramatic double die, and for good reason. It was quickly becoming one of the most iconic modern errors of the Lincoln Cent series. At first, raw examples in circulated condition sold for modest amounts, $10 to $20. But as more collectors realized the scarcity of higher-grade specimens, values began to climb. Uncirculated examples fetched over $100 by the early 1980s. By the 1990s, third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC began authenticating and encapsulating the most pristine finds. But the real escalation came with the rise of online auctions. Suddenly, collectors from across the country and around the world could bid on rare U.S. error coins in real time. A 1972 DDO in mint state was no longer just a regional curiosity. It was a prize, and bidding wars became common. As the market matured, the coin's position solidified. The 1972 DDO001 joined the 1955 DDO and 1969 SDDO as part of a revered trio of mid-20th century double dies. Demand surged. Values rose again. But there was something else that added a layer of intrigue. In 2008, a collector in Oregon, while comparing multiple 1972 double die cents, noticed something odd. His coin, already graded MS65 red, had a small die chip inside the R in Liberty, a marker not seen on other specimens. Further analysis revealed that this chip likely formed late in the die's life. Its presence meant that the coin had been struck just before the die was pulled from production. This variant, soon dubbed the Liberty die chip, created a subcategory within an already valuable error. Some collectors viewed it as a curiosity. Others treated it as a holy grail, a moment frozen in time, capturing the die's very last breath. One of these coins, with exceptionally strong doubling in the R chip, sold in a private sale for $2,800 in 2015. Meanwhile, the broader market held steady. Mid-grade circulated coins sold for $150, $300. Uncirculated examples routinely brought in $500 or more. High-end gems in MS66 and above, especially with full red luster, soared past the $1,000 mark, but not every discovery was dramatic. Some happened quietly. A woman in Arizona, cleaning out her late father's desk, stumbled upon a small envelope marked 72 weird penny. Inside was a bright, uncirculated cent in a plastic flip. She had no idea what it was worth. A local shop offered her $50, but curiosity led her to submit it for grading. It came back MS66 red, 1972 DDO001. She sold it months later for $850. Today, the 1972 double die cent remains a cornerstone of modern error collecting. Its boldness, its history, and the sheer surprise of finding such a dramatic mistake in a coin so seemingly ordinary continue to captivate collectors. It's a reminder that even the most routine objects can carry secrets, if you're willing to look closely enough. And now, more than 5 decades later, the finest known examples of the 1972 double die obverse Lincoln cent, graded MS67 red, have sold for as much as $14 for 100. A 1-cent coin, elevated by a fleeting moment of mechanical imperfection, has etched its name into the fabric of numismatic legend.